Hello, welcome back to my channel that I have been neglecting severely this year, but it's okay. We have a story to share with you today. We are going to share our experience with infertility.
And today, in a little bit of a different setting, we decided to come outside because it's beautiful and sunny out. It's about 75 degrees, and we're just very thankful to God for all the blessings of beautiful weather.
Okay, so we're gonna start at the beginning and just share our experience and our fertility journey with you guys, because I've been sharing about our infertility journey on Instagram since February of this year, 2020, and I wanted to share our whole story together here on YouTube because I found that a lot of people find it very helpful when we talk about our experience because they've felt so alone in that experience. And I never want anyone to feel like they're the only ones going through this, or that they're alone, or that there's no hope. So hopefully you will enjoy and benefit from hearing our story, and it will help you in some way.
Kind of wanted to start with some preconceived ideas. You know, we're both young. We got married when I was 25 and Melissa was 24, and of course you always you assume the best, and I think I just took it for granted and thought automatically, like, as soon as we would start trying to grow our family, that we would be able to conceive. And little did we know that wouldn't be the case. And so life, you know, kind of has its curveballs, and it's up to us to decide how we handle them, and to really pray through these things with God and to trust in Him, even when there's surprises coming your way. We wanted to make sure that we planned our family in a way that fell in line with the church teaching, and so we started going to natural family planning classes when we were dating.
If you've seen anything I've ever shared online before, you know that we use Creighton, we love Creighton, I teach Creighton. So if you're new here, Creighton is a big part of our lives and we love it so much. It's a type of natural family planning. So that's what we started learning when we were engaged and what we've used throughout our marriage.
It's been a wonderful journey of learning, intimately knowing every aspect of our fertility has been such an eye-opening experience. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I remember when we were engaged and just thinking, this is amazing. This is really preparing us for marriage, and here we are today. So, you know, we've been through the ups and the downs of both, you know, infertility and achieving pregnancy, and we'll share a little bit more of our story.
So when we first got married, we felt it was most responsible for us to temporarily avoid pregnancy. So we used Creighton for a year to avoid pregnancy. We decided the month of our first anniversary of our wedding to try to achieve pregnancy. And I thought, I don't know if you had the same thought you can share, but I really thought that I would try to get pregnant. I know when I'm fertile because of Creighton and charting my cycle. And so as soon as I tried to get pregnant, I would get pregnant. Because I was charting my cycle from the time that we got engaged, we knew that there were some biological markers that were not up to what is average among most women. And so because of that, we knew that we might struggle with fertility, but I really didn't take that seriously. Like, I didn't really think it would be an issue. I was like, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it if we need to. But I really thought we would get pregnant the first time we tried. So we started trying in April. We got married April 21st, 2018. We started trying April that month of 2019.
Yeah.
And we did not get pregnant right away.
The first time it was okay, well, maybe we didn't chart right, or maybe we got the times of ovulation wrong, and then the second time, again, no pregnancy. And the third time it was just like, man, like, this is like, you get your hopes up for this really exciting moment, and then you take a pregnancy test and you're negative, and then you wonder, well, like, did I take it too soon? Should we wait a couple more days? And we took multiple pregnancy tests within the same week.
So many pregnancy tests.
And negative, you know. And
I think I would always be even more disappointed, because I would always have it in my head, okay, if we get pregnant this month, then how are we gonna share the news? So Mother's Day is coming up next month, or then Father's Day is coming up next month, or then my birthday's coming up, or his birthday's coming up. And I kept thinking, there's some event coming up that I can share this news, that we can share this news with our family, with our friends in like such a fun way. And then we kept missing those milestones because we weren't getting pregnant. And the thing with Creighton, and the reason why we were able to identify our struggle with infertility so soon, is because with Creighton, there's a 75% chance that a couple will achieve pregnancy the first time that they try. And so if you don't achieve pregnancy the first time, doesn't necessarily mean there's an infertility problem, but it's just that you know with such high accuracy when you are fertile. The chances of a couple achieving pregnancy when they're intending to achieve pregnancy using Creighton by the 6th month is 98%. And so if a couple doesn't achieve pregnancy using Creighton by 6 months, then you know that there is some issue with infertility and there's some health issue between either the woman or the man or both that needs to be addressed. It's a huge gift to be able to know it sooner, because typically a doctor will tell a couple to try to get pregnant for a year, and if they don't get pregnant after a year, then they'll start trying to figure out what's wrong. Whereas with Creighton, it kind of speeds the process in half. So that was a huge gift to be able to identify those issues earlier than we would have otherwise.
And I just hearing it, out loud and looking back on it, I think there was just a little bit of pride and arrogance. I think just in the sense that we control the timing of when we get pregnant, and we were almost like forgetting about God's role in that, and God really taking the lead in the sense of saying like, here's life, and giving us that gift of a soul of our baby. And so infertility humbles you, and it opens up, it really opens up you being able to empathize and understand other people who struggle with this on an even longer and deeper level. There's just I could definitely understand now.
And I should have said this at the beginning, but 1 in 8 couples struggle with infertility. So if you are going through infertility, please know that you are not alone. 1 in 8 couples, that is a lot of couples. Like in a small group, one of those couples will be struggling with infertility. To me, the first few months were the hardest because I just assumed, I took it for granted. I just assumed like, we're gonna try to get pregnant, no big deal. And although I always had the idea that I trusted God's timing and that God's timing is better than my timing, I still thought my timing was better. I was like, we have great timing. We've been responsible. We're ready. Let's go. Like, what's the problem? Soon after that, in the summer of 2019, there was a lot of difficult things that we went through with our family and with just like various other factors that we never could have anticipated. And that would have been really hard to go through pregnant. It's not that you couldn't go through it pregnant. Of course you can. Of course, pregnant women and couples who are expecting go through hard things. But I couldn't have anticipated those things. And so in my little mind, that not knowing the bigger picture, like I thought my timing was perfect, but seeing as things unfold, I was like, wow, I really have no idea what the bigger picture is of life. And it just gave me confirmation. Although that was a very difficult time for us and our family, it gave me a lot of consolation that my timing is not what's best. God has a better plan than I do. And so just trust. Like, it's hard and it will be difficult and it will be a struggle, but just trust that like he knows so much better than I do. And so I found a lot of comfort in the midst of the pain of that time.
Well, and I honestly, I have to confess too that in those really difficult moments, especially as you get your hopes up and then you fall, and then you get your hopes up and you fall, and you get your hopes up and you fall. At a certain point, I just almost felt like I lost that sense of hope. The enemy kind of crept in there, kind of putting those lies in that you would never get pregnant, or that this isn't just meant to work out, and just those doubts, I think doubts in the goodness of God sometimes, even thoughts like that would creep in. And so we just have to really fight those and trust in the Lord, and just make sure that we look at the bigger picture of how God has blessed us in our lives. And if we focus on how God has been there for us throughout the course of our lives, then you can really put the puzzle together in those really challenging moments of your life, and to say, man, like, he's still in control and he's still with me.
So then moving on to August of 2019, that month I went to my first training week to become a Creighton practitioner. And so because I was there, because I had been charting, because I hadn't been getting pregnant, I knew there was going to be doctors there. So I brought all of my charts with me from the past 2 years of charting, showed my charts to the doctors and was like, any thoughts, any advice? We haven't been getting pregnant. We've been trying for a while. There was a few recommendations that they had for me, but I wasn't working with them as a doctor. It was just a doctor that was at my training center, and so it wasn't necessarily like I started working with a doctor at that time, but I had a few recommendations. Try this vitamin B6 protocol because I have limited cervical mucus. Cervical mucus is necessary for pregnancy, and so vitamin B6 increases cervical mucus. So I tried that for a few months, didn't notice any difference. There was a medical test that was recommended to me by some of those doctors called a hysterosalpingogram, or I think the short name for it is HSG. So I went to my OB and I asked for that test to be done, and he was like, I'm not worried about you, you're fine. But yeah, he ordered the test to be done. And so I went to a clinic that did that type of procedure, and basically they insert a dye into your, or a contrast into your uterus, and it goes through your fallopian tubes, and they're looking to see if there's anything abnormal going on, if your fallopian tubes are blocked, or etc., things like that. So they did the test, everything was essentially normal. I did that in October of 2019. And thankfully, there was a doctor trained in Creighton, which is called a NaPro Doctor. There's a NaPro Doctor that went to training that October of 2019. So before that, we didn't have any doctors trained in this method that we use close to us. The closest one was 5 hours away in Tampa. So I was super grateful. I heard about her. I heard that she was getting trained, and I was like, okay, perfect. I will work with her in a couple months. I also wasn't really in a rush to do testing or figure it out. I kind of was like very leisurely at the beginning. I did that test in October, and then we didn't really pick up fertility testing until February of this year, 2020. So then in February of 2020, we both started working with Dr. Pena, who's my doctor. She is trained in the Creighton model, so she's a NaPro doctor. And the first thing that she wanted to do was test my hormone levels. In order to test your hormone levels effectively, you have to do blood work throughout your entire cycle. Taking blood on one day of your cycle doesn't give you any information because your hormones are supposed to change throughout your cycle. So I did blood work every other day for about 3 weeks, which is a lot of blood work, a lot of needles, a lot of being poked, and I was so excited in the beginning to learn what we were going to learn, like gather more information, okay, figure out what's going on. By the end of those 3 weeks, I was so over it. My veins were all bruised. I just was like ready to be done. But it was very helpful because we got to see how are my levels of estrogen, how are my levels of progesterone, do I have sufficient, because you need enough of both of those hormones in order to become pregnant and then sustain a pregnancy. So that information was really helpful. So there was a few things that she ordered at the same time. It was the blood work, it was the ultrasounds, and then the seminal fluid analysis for AJ. So she wanted us to do all of those at once to kind of just get as much information as we could to then come up with a game plan moving forward for treatment of whatever health issues appeared. So I did the blood work and nothing really abnormal showed, but I did the ultrasounds also. I did abdominal ultrasound on my stomach and then transvaginal ultrasound from the inside. The transvaginal ultrasound was the one that gave me the most information or the most relevant, helpful information for us in our fertility. And basically my doctor told me that my uterus looked like I had already been through menopause. I'm 27, I was 26 at the time, nowhere near menopause. I've always been healthy, I've never had difficult periods or anything like that. So she told me that it looked like I had already been through menopause, which was very surprising to me, and that my uterine lining was very thin, much thinner than it should have been during that time of my cycle. So she suspected that I had an infection in my uterus. I had never had any symptoms, no signs of an infection, no pain, no weird discharge or anything like that. No idea that I would have had an infection. And so that was the first major thing that she found that she wanted to explore more.
As Melissa mentioned, we went through what was called the seminal fluid analysis, and of course that's always a tricky one, right? Because I don't know, you hear in movies and stuff where you go to the bathroom and you look at a magazine and you do something, and then then you have your seminal fluid analysis in a condom and
or in a cup, right?
Or in a cup, yeah. And so
there's a few different ways to collect seminal fluid to analyze it. The most common one, I think, is you go to the doctor's office, right? They give you porn in a cup and you do your thing.
So of course, that wasn't in the cards for us, and so we started looking and researching how can we do this analysis in a way that still isn't affecting our lives in the sense of our morality. And there is a moral way to do a seminal fluid analysis, and believe it or not, we found out of a lab, I believe is it out of Creighton?
Yeah, so it's the research institute where all of the research where Creighton comes out of. It's called the Pope Paul VI Research Institute in Omaha, Nebraska, and they sell these at-home seminal fluid analysis kits. So I bought one for like $25. They mailed it to us.
And so you have to kind of work your way in terms of the labs themselves to bring in the kit and make sure that you do it in a timely manner. But in essence, without getting in graphic or anything, but in essence, it's a perforated condom that you have intercourse, and then it's still open to life in the sense that, of course, a little bit of seminal fluid goes through the condom, and so you bring in the seminal fluid to the lab right afterwards, immediately, and so
it's still collected in the condom, although it's open that life could be conceived. Like, we're still open to life in that active intercourse, but the condom will still collect enough seminal fluid to analyze it.
And it was a successful collection. The analysis was also successful, and thankfully, everything came out normal, and I thought that was one of those opportunities and experiences where we were able to really learn that you can dive deeper into morality and into things that people might say no, there's no other option, and if you just do a little bit of homework, there actually is. So then it's well worth it.
I find that really important to share with people, because a lot of people would want to, especially Catholics. Men don't feel comfortable going to do that. That doesn't uphold your dignity as a man. It strips your value and dignity to go into a doctor's office, masturbate in a cup. Like, nobody wants to do that. And there are other options. I think it's just so unknown. So I feel like very strongly about sharing this other option. And I'll put a link in the description below where you can find those kits. You still have to be working with a doctor who can order the kit to be analyzed. You still have to find a lab to analyze it, but at least you know that there's an option where you can do this analysis in a way that's fully in line with church teaching, our human sexuality, our dignity as man, woman, and couple, the gift of life, and just the sanctity of the marital act.
And it works. That's the other thing. It's not like it's people say the same thing about NFP. I kind of look at it similarly, and they just question if it could even work, and it does. Both work, and we're a witness of that.
So then we did those tests in February. February was our testing month, and then the beginning of March was like March 2nd, I think, that we had a follow-up with our doctor, and she went over all the test results with us. And to me, that was so overwhelming and stressful, because it was just so much information. Although most of it was good news, it was just a lot. It was a lot of information. We were going over a lot of test results. We're summarizing, like, this was great and this was great, but like, we went through everything in detail, and like, well, this maybe this is an issue.
Right.
We'll see. And so there was a lot of like unknowns, and then there was the clear issue of my uterus and the possible infection. Also at that time, I think that was the time where she also noticed that something was off with my thyroid. So through blood work, she saw like something's off with your thyroid and diagnosed me with hypothyroidism. So she told us all of that, and she wanted to do a, what's it called? Hysteroscopy, to go into my uterus with a camera to see what was going on. She assumed that it had been an infection, a very old infection, and it turned into scar tissue, and that's why my uterine lining was not absorbing nutrients and thickening and thinning the way that it should have been.
She started at the high level, and then she continued moving down deeper and deeper in terms of understanding our fertility. It's very complicated. It's really amazing, our reproductive systems and everything that has to come together in order to make life. I would just say, if can find a really great doctor who won't just do surface level work, but will really dive deep and get into the medicine and your background and what you're eating and just all these different studies of our bodies, then they can really find what the answer is.
I think that's my biggest frustration with the fertility world in general in medicine, is that there's not an urgency of like, get to the root of your health issues. Like, why aren't you getting pregnant? Because infertility is not a diagnosis. Please don't ever accept that as a diagnosis. You are not diagnosed with infertility. Infertility is a symptom of an underlying health condition. So if you are struggling with infertility, infertility is very real. But if you're struggling with infertility or secondary infertility, that means that there's something going on with your health that's preventing you from getting pregnant. So there's not a such thing as just like unexplained infertility, like we don't know why. There's a reason, and your doctor should be working as long as it takes to figure out what that reason is, and then treat that health issue so that you guys can become healthy and then achieve pregnancy the way that your body was meant to function. She had told me about the possible infection. She wanted to do a hysteroscopy to go into the camera to check it out, see what was going on. And she told me that if she did find an infection, she would do a DNC to essentially scrape out the scar tissue and the infection from the inside of my uterus, make it clean again. I would go on antibiotics, and then it would be treated, hopefully. But that procedure needed to be done at a certain time in my cycle. It needed to be done, I think it was right after my period, and that happened to be like where I was in my cycle as she was telling me this. So I was like, that's like right now. Do I need to do this like today or next month? And she was like, well, like we could do it tomorrow or we could do it next cycle. And that was really stressful for me. I felt really anxious about that, and I don't normally experience a lot of anxiety, but it just was like so much information all at once, and I processed kind of slowly when I learned new information like that. So I felt like it was the right thing to do, but it was just a lot to take in at once. I didn't want to wait another cycle because we needed to wait 5 months after that procedure before we started trying again. And I didn't want to delay that another month. We did decide to schedule it for the very next day after she told me that. I think it was on March 3rd that we did that procedure. And what was amazing that, again, we couldn't have predicted was that COVID hit a week after that, 10 days after that.
In terms of the shutdown.
Shutdown, quarantine, all elective procedures were canceled for months. And so if I didn't get it then, and if I was like, let me just wait another month, I would have had to wait many more months. So I was super grateful for the way that the timing worked out of that. So I got the procedure. It was an intense procedure to me. I was on a lot of drugs. I was awake, but super groggy, like mostly asleep, but a little awake. I was very aware of what was going on. It was painful because she went in with the camera. She saw that there was an infection, and so she did what she needed to do, scrape it out. Very painful. But they were so kind. There was a medical assistant just like petting my arm, like, it's okay, you're okay. And I'm like, By later on in the day, like that same day, I was feeling fine. She told us to wait five full cycles before we started trying again. So we were like, okay, so now we're just in a waiting period and a praying period. What was interesting about that whole time is that although it was difficult and there were like moments of more intense sorrow or sadness that we weren't able to get pregnant when we wanted to, we weren't able to become parents when we wanted to, I felt so much hope through the whole time, and I felt so much excitement at all my doctor's appointments. Like my mindset going into all the doctor's appointments was like, what am I going to learn today? You know, like because I trusted our medical team so much, I just knew like they have our best interest in mind and they're going to help us figure it out. And I believed with all my heart that God intended for me to be pregnant one day and for us to be parents biologically. Like I just knew that in my heart. I trusted that that was true. And so all the appointments, while they were like sometimes stressful and sometimes discouraging and sometimes overwhelming, I felt so excited. Like I would go to work the next day and be like, listen to what I learned. I learned that I have this issue and I look like I've been through menopause already. And they would be like, are you excited about that? And I'm like, well, like I'm excited that I know what the issue is, because when you know what the issue is, then you know what the treatment plan is. So it was very interesting, like the way that I felt about it, because I felt almost excited about like learning what was wrong with me health-wise, because then I knew that now I know what the next step is.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. And it's like I mentioned the ups and the downs, and I think it started going back up as soon as we started doing these tests and really digging deeper and working with a team that would dig deep. And once the doctor told us that she thought that it could be an infection, then I was like really hopeful, and I was just thanking God, not for the infection, but thanking God that like this could be the source of our infertility. And sure enough, it was.
Well, wait, before we get there, something that gave me so much hope was that our doctor told me, and this is like a bold statement, but it's true for her. She said 100% of my patients, all of them, who had this as their issue, so this uterine infection situation that I had, if that was the issue preventing them from getting pregnant, 100% of them got pregnant the first time they tried after having the procedure done and healing for those 5 months. And so I was like, okay, cool, do whatever you need to do. That was just like so crazy to me, that something like that I couldn't even, like I didn't even know was existing in my body, could be so serious to prevent pregnancy from happening. Then that was it. We did the procedure. She told us to wait 5 months. Hint for the next video, what she said about all her patients was also true for us. And we will share in a whole nother video all of the miracles that resulted in our pregnancy. I am currently almost 6 months pregnant, and there's too many miracles to even get started with in this video, so we'll save that for another one. But in those 5 months where she had told us to wait, she was like, let's get you as healthy as possible so that if and when you do get pregnant, your body is ready for nourishing and sustaining new life. So in the summer, I took a micronutrient test, which I had never heard of before, but basically they took blood and like were looking at my white blood cells. Is that what they were doing? I don't know exactly, but they were looking at my blood like genetics in a very specific way, to see what nutrients my body was deficient in. And then she combined it with my 23andMe genetics test and was able to tell me, okay, you're deficient in this nutrient, but it's actually not because you're not eating enough of it, it's because your body is not absorbing it. So it's an absorption issue versus a consumption issue. So some of the things I needed to change my diet and increase because it was a consumption issue, I just wasn't eating enough. But some of them were an absorption issue, and so I needed to take certain supplements that were in like an activated form so my body could actually absorb it where it wasn't absorbing it from food. An example of like the biggest diet change that I made through that information was that I had been a pescatarian, so no meat, only fish, for 7 years, from 2013 to 2020. I didn't eat meat at all. No chicken, no red meat, no turkey, no whatever.
That seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, so she told me a few nutrients that I was deficient in and recommended that I started eating red meat again because it was what my body needed. And so I did. I started eating meat again in the summer, knowing that I'm giving my body what it needs and knowing that I'm supporting my body with the nutrients that it needs has been really great.
And it's cool. I mean, if you look at it, it's almost like a customized multivitamin or multivitamins, because she takes a lot of them, which is really interesting. I had never seen that before. So, and it works as a prenatal.
Some of the supplements that I'm on is like a vitamin B complex and magnesium, CoQ10 and carnitine, iodine for my thyroid, iron, fish oil. I think those are all the supplements. And then there was some dietary changes in addition to eating meat. That is like a lot of the basics of our infertility story. We kind of walked you through like all of the medical treatment and everything. I think to me the biggest thing was that like hope is essential through all of this, and hope is not dependent on our circumstances. Hope is solely in Jesus. Like Jesus is good no matter what our circumstances are. And so just like praising him through the entire situation and thanking him for the season that we had together as a married couple, to focus on our marriage and to focus on each other.
Praying to the saints for their intercession and asking Our Lady to also cover us with her protection and her prayers and to intercede for us. But, I mean, it was a really good lesson in that. I think God was calling us to trust Him more, even though I personally think I still struggle with that a good amount. I do feel like as a couple, that was a really good lesson for us to learn that, to trust and to confide that His plan, His timing is perfect, and we just have to, like Mary, be His handmaid or hand servants and just do His will. And if you keep doing His will, you keep trusting, everything will work out.
And okay, so who were some of our like go-to prayers and saints and everything during that time? Definitely Saint Anne and Saint Joachim.
Yep, Saint Anne and Saint Joachim.
Patrons of infertility and of marriage. They're amazing.
Saint Joseph, of course.
Saint Joseph and Our Lady of La Leche.
Yeah.
My girl. I have a whole video on here about Our Lady of La Leche. If you haven't seen it already, I'll link it down below. She's amazing. She helped us. She gave me so much peace the whole time. The rosary,
right,
daily mass,
and just going to Jesus and just trying to dive deeper into our faith and into prayer and mass and just doing life together with Him.
The litany of trust is another one. I think the biggest thing is, like, even when you struggle to believe it, decide, because we know that it's true, that God is always good and He has a better plan and His timing is perfect. And we can trust Him, and He's trustworthy, and He loves us, and He wants better for us than we even want for ourselves.
And that there's no prayer that is not heard in heaven. And so even if we don't feel like it's heard, or we're talking to a wall, or just a painting, or an image, just know that there is a God that cares about your life and cares about the intimate details, and He's always listening.
Something huge for me, I heard a podcast, and this girl was talking about her experience as a single woman and then leading up to and meeting her husband. So that was what it was about. But something that stood out to me so much was the idea of thanking God in advance. Like knowing that He's good and thanking Him in advance for the gifts that He will bless you with because He is faithful. So from January until we got pregnant, every single day I was thanking Him for our baby. Like, thank you so much for the gift of our baby. Thank you for this pregnancy. Thank you, because He's outside of time. So like currently I wasn't pregnant as I was praying that, but He's outside of time. And so He's already given the gifts that He's going to give us. And having confidence, like that helped me a lot with trust and confidence, was to decide like He's good and faithful and I'm going to trust Him and I'm going to thank Him already. So thanking God in advance was huge for me to have hope and to like reaffirm my trust in God.
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them here below in the little boxes.
And if you're not already following me on Instagram, my handle is Melissa Grace Tablata, and in my Instagram highlights, there's two highlights, one called Infertility and one called Infertility Continued. And in those two highlights, you can see like all of this in real time, because I was on my stories, I was sharing like all the time in real time of like what was going on and what we were learning, and so you can kind of see our experience there as well. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope that it can give you some hope that God is with you in the midst of the season of infertility, and there is joy in the struggle to be found, and there's always hope.
And amidst any difficult time, regardless of life's trials, God is with you.
If you are going through infertility or you know someone who is, please know that we are praying for you. We're always praying for couples who are going through infertility and praying for your peace, and that God comforts you and that He will bless you with a child very soon. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I plan on posting more often, and let us know in the comments how we can pray for you specifically. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.
Take care.